Welcome to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't, a podcast dedicated to helping you create the relationship you truly want.
Welcome. Unpacking the Benefits of a Healthy Sex Life, episode 109, Insights from a Sex Therapist Expert. Keeping it real with Rhoda on a podcast of substance. Are you curious about how your sex life stacks up against the rest of America? According to multiple studies, the average American adult has sex between 50 and 70 times a year. That's once to twice a week. However, a 2017 study from the Archives of Sexual Behavior found that adults in their 20s have sex more frequently with an average of 80. That's roughly once every 5 days. On the other hand, adults in their 60s have sex less frequently with an average of 20 times a year, around once every 18 days. Did you know that men feel greater distress when they're not content with their sex life? I think people do know that, and I personally attribute that to testosterone. A 2013 study from Australia found that while women are more likely to feel severe distress from lack of sexual satisfaction, men tie their frustration to their relationships and feel less able to resolve their feelings about it. This means that for men, it's not just about sex, it's about their overall happiness in their relationship. So if you're a man who's struggling with those feelings, I personally suggest you talk about it. Are you looking for ways to improve your relationship and overall health? A healthy sex life could do just that. Not only does it strengthen the bond between you and your partner, but it also offers numerous health benefits. And I'm just going to run through this list, but it's a lot of good stuff. But I certainly think pleasure should be at the top of the list. Regular sex improves sleep, increases energy, improves mood, reduces stress, anxiety, and even blood pressure. And that's not all. Women may also experience improved bladder control, while men may have a reduced risk of prostate cancer. According to a 2019 study published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine, physical health and wellness can have a significant impact on sexual function and satisfaction, particularly for older adults. So don't pass it by because you're old. So why not prioritize your sex life and wellness? Are you looking to improve the satisfaction in your sexual relationship? Communication is key. According to a 2017 review published in PLOS One, couples who were both able to initiate sex reported greater satisfaction in the overall relationship. On the other hand, those who adhered to more strict gender roles, with the man always initiating, were less likely to be satisfied. So don't be afraid to take charge and initiate intimacy with your partner. By breaking away from traditional gender roles and communicating openly, you can improve the satisfaction and closeness in your relationship. Overall, research suggests that sexual health and wellness is a complex and multifaceted topic, influenced by a variety of factors including age, gender, relationship status, stress levels, and physical health. By prioritizing open communication and taking steps to improve overall health and wellness, couples can improve their sexual satisfaction and strengthen their relationship. So I've invited a guest to help learn about this important topic. Dr. Cheryl Fraser is a clinical psychologist and sex therapist. She is a relationship expert that has helped thousands of couples jumpstart their love life. She is author of Buddha's Bedroom, creator of an online couples immersion program, Become Passion. Create love that lasts a lifetime. She is also a fellow podcaster on sex, love, and elephants, helping couples ignite the connection and sizzle they think they've lost. So my first question today, Dr. Cheryl, is tell me about your disagreement with the research I talked about in my introduction.
Yeah, most certainly. I think it's so important we bust the myth that regular average North Americans are having sex 1, 2, or 3 times a week at various ages. The research is out there, and it's legitimate research, as you know. You only quote real research. You're a scientist and an expert, as am I. But here's the thing. These are often small groups of people. They aren't necessarily representative of the general population, and often the studies don't break down what does it mean to have sex. Does that mean intercourse? Does it mean you cuddle naked and kiss? Does it mean mutual masturbation? And what I can say as a clinician, and I suspect you run across this yourself, is that we see couples who are having very little or no sex together with each other. They may have a solo sexual life, a masturbation life. They may not. And they feel broken. They're convinced their relationship is in serious trouble because of the minimal or complete lack of sexual contact. So I get pretty frustrated by these articles that are quoted as though they have, surveyed millions of couples. Also, a lot of them don't break it down by age group. A lot of the research you did, but none of the research you just quoted have I ever seen represented in my office or with the thousands of couples I've worked with. The frequency is much lower of sexual contact, except maybe in those horny, wonderful, amazing first 18 months.
Absolutely. And I couldn't track it, but I did come across something and I've lost track of it. But they said 39% of people do not have sex.
Yeah. I would say, and let's, for our purposes today, if you're in a committed relationship with someone, gay, straight, hetero, LGBTQ, but you're in a committed sexual romantic relationship with someone, you have a monogamous partner, polyamory is fine too. But for that group of people, the only person we're meant to have sex with is you, our partner. So if I'm not being sexual with you, whether or not I have a solo sexual life, I am missing out on a gigantic aspect of being alive and feeling alive. And some of the statistics, or let me correct that a little bit, Rhoda. The clinical experience myself and our colleagues see is much closer to a 30 to 40% of couples in committed long-term relationship. And I'm defining that as simply more than, say, 2 to 3 years together. Our 30 to 40% often report being in a sexless relationship, which for those purposes, sexless is defined as I make love with you, my partner, 6 or fewer times a year. And of that, say 30%, particularly in our 50s, 60s, and 70s, a lot of the ones I work with haven't had sex in many years with each other at all. So I want to normalize it for everybody listening to that wonderful research overview you did that's thinking, oh my goodness, Rhoda, we're doomed. Our neighbors are all having sex 3 times a week. We're lucky if we do 3 times a quarter, 3 times a year. And instead shift to what I believe your chosen focus is today is what can we do to make our sensual sexual life a priority again and move from wherever we are? Because guess what? We're clinicians. You've got to start where you are. And if where you are is you and I haven't touched each other sexually in 10 years, that's where we start. Let me quickly tell you about a couple in my online program from 3 years ago. They were in their early 70s. They've given me permission to use their real names. Hers is like my name. It's Cheryl and Norm. Cheryl and Norm had not been sexual together in over 30 years. There had been multiple affairs in their 40s, fighting, anger, and they, as a last-ditch attempt, chose to join my program, and they worked so diligently and so hard, from holding hands more, snuggling more. I take people through a lot of exercises on how to communicate about their own needs and desires that we're really poor at talking to our partner about, even if we have a good relationship. Let's cut to the chase. They recreated a sexual life together in their early 70s. It still makes me tear up a little bit. And I share that story often because they're very happy to be a beacon of hope for other couples. They did a video telling their story that people can see. And how brave is that to come forth with that level of vulnerability so that other couples can have hope? The moral of the story is we've got to start where you are and look at, for us right now, what are some steps we can make to improve our sensuality overall?
Absolutely. I love that. That is exactly what we're talking about here. Thank you. A 2018 study published in the Journal of Sex and Marital Therapy found that communication was a key factor in sexual satisfaction for both men and women, with couples who communicated more frequently reporting higher levels of satisfaction. What can be done by couples to get over their awkwardness and to help their words, or maybe even just get comfortable with their awkwardness, and to help their words work to truly understand each other about sex?
I love this. Okay, I'm going to very briefly teach the model I use when I work with couples. People often think all I do is sex. Absolutely not, because there ain't no sex in a relationship unless you're also working on the relationship, as you know very well, my expert friend. So my model is this. I teach what I call the passion triangle, which is very simply the 3 key areas. The way I teach it, and this will resonate with your training and many other models, that couples need to work on. The first one I call intimacy, but I'm not using the word intimacy as a euphemism for sex or nudity. I'm talking about sex, communication intimacy. I'm talking about hopes and dreams. I'm talking about conflict resolution, the vulnerability to be able to talk about the things you're afraid of, how to repair, and all the things you are so familiar with. We start there. In my 3-month program, we spend the first 5 weeks on communication. And we don't talk about sex. We're talking about the fights about the kids, about you don't do the chores, about you never celebrate my birthday, all the regular stuff. I need to teach couples to be able to talk about tough stuff outside the bedroom before we can have any success talking about that area that for so many of us is fraught with vulnerability, even embarrassment, shame, repeated rejections, or repeated feeling pressured. So how can couples start to talk better about sex? First, follow all the great advice on your podcast and elsewhere on talking in general. But then I have a couple of exercises I'll synopsis right now that people can do at home. There's longer explanations in the book or in the program, but quite simply, I take people through a questionnaire. They fill this out themselves, separate from their partner. And if or when they're ready, they share some or all of their answers. Not everybody's there yet. And the first questionnaire is, what turns me on and what turns me off? And so really breaking it down. And at our age, we're women of a certain age, darling, what turns us on and off may have changed from even a year ago. Physiologically, psychologically, how's the relationship doing between you and I? Am I worried about my grandson who's struggling at school? All the factors, and I have people answer for themselves, and for most of them, it's a bit of a revelation. They haven't really thought of it that way before. Well, an obvious one for so many men and women is fatigue. Fatigue gets in the way of our sexuality, or being lazy and watching Netflix until it's too late and we're way too tired. So I get people to really do a bit of a moral inventory in a way on, how am I, Cheryl, getting in the way of my own turn-ons? It's more detailed than that, but people can, right from what we're saying right now, they can start to think about it. What gets in the way emotionally in your relationship or outside of it? What gets in the way physically, from fatigue to menopause to erection difficulties? What gets in the way relationally? You're critical and you're unkind, and I don't want to have sex with you when you've been telling me all the things I did wrong. I have to watch out for that. I've got a bright, critical, discriminating mind, and I've got to make sure I'm not pointing out what he forgot to do instead of what he did. It's something I still work on. So that's one thing people can do. What turns me on, what turns me off? And then the second thing, very closely related, is what can I do to improve my own turn on, my own interest in sex? Can I go to bed earlier and get a better night's sleep? Can I read erotica in the afternoon and sort of turn my mind and my body towards desire or turn on? Can I write love notes and sex notes? All the things that people go, yeah, I know, go on date night, blah, blah. And I say, do you go on date nights? I say, well, no, we just, watch TV. So again, doing a self-analysis on really what we're talking about, Rhoda, and I know you already anticipate this as another expert, is so much of the focus is on what I need you to do to turn me on, what I need you to do differently, what you're not doing right. Now, that needs to be addressed as well. But essentially, I use the phrase, how can we become the passion we desire? Hence, the name of the program is Become Passion. It's about becoming it, not getting it or wishing for it or mourning it. They have a place. But then how can I, Cheryl, become a better partner, listener, lover, seductress, etc.? This is such a huge topic. We could do the whole show on communication, but at least that's a little something, drawing from your other episodes and your other work and saying, now, how do we talk about SEX with ourselves first, and then say, hey, honey, I'd love to sit down, let's take a cup of tea, maybe a glass of wine, and talk a little bit about some of our answers, because we may learn something that will help us move towards a more sensual life. Now, real briefly, I'm going to keep this super quick. I said there were 3 keys to passion, the passion triangle: intimacies, communication, conflict resolution, great couple skills. The second one I call thrill, and that's the butterflies in the tummy, the things that came so easily when we were dating and all hopped up on biochemistry. I'd love your listeners to know that the biochemistry of falling in love on functional MRI has been shown to mimic the biochemistry of obsessive compulsive disorder. So we literally are madly in love, hyper-focused, obsessed with, thinking about, turned on, horny, excited, planning, all the great things that tend to fall slowly or quickly by the wayside after that roughly 18-month mark, where I move from conquering the caveman or cavewoman to decorating a cave and making cave babies. So I talk to my couples a lot about dating, about seducing, about love notes, about surprising each other. Of course, we all love Esther Perel's work and research. And one of the things she says that I think is so powerful is when we watch our partner in their zone of genius, when your partner watches you on this podcast, or maybe you're great at golf, or you're able to be a fly on the wall where they're giving a presentation at the sales meeting, we're more attracted to them. We have desire because it's thrilling. We see them in their adventure zone or their power zone. So I get couples to create adventure dates. It's a great study. It's a really old study. It's out of Vancouver, Canada, where at the time the longest and highest suspension bridge was. I'm sure it's been surpassed. This was decades ago. Briefly, did a study, a heterosexual study. They had an attractive female dupe, research assistant, PhD psychology person, stand either at the beginning of the extension bridge, where people were just in a normal state, or at the end when they just walked over this pretty, scary thing. Dr. Dutton's study, it was well quoted 20 odd years ago. You may remember it. What they found was this. The female research assistant approached men who were at the start of the bridge and told them, hey, we're doing a study on something like, the economic resources of the river. Love to ask you 3 questions. And if you'd like more information about the study, here's my phone number at the lab. That was the setup. And she spoke to men at the beginning of the bridge. She spoke to a different group of men at the end of the bridge. And what they found still cracks me up. Men who had crossed the suspension bridge and were in a state of enhanced arousal and excitement, doing something exciting, adventuresome, were far more likely to phone the attractive female research assistant under the guise of, how'd the study go, sister? And so it's a lovely little hilarious study on when we do something exciting, we find people more attractive. Guess what? Go on an adventure date with your sweetheart. That's the thrill part. Finally, the rest of this show, we're talking about the 3rd key to passion: emotional intimacy, communication being the first, thrill being the second, and what I call sensuality being the third. And sensuality, again, why that word? Why not sex? Why not sexuality? Because I'm talking about snuggling, kissing, holding hands when you walk the dogs, having a cuddle couch to watch your show on instead of 2 separate chairs, and of course the entire spectrum of erotic and sexual encountering. If you're not building all 3 sides of that passion triangle together, it's going to be pretty hard to have a fulfilling, connected, and rich sexual life. No thrill, you can't even talk about stuff, and then you expect to light up the bedroom. It's naive and heartbreaking.
Yes. Wow, that was a lot of great information. My goodness. It made me think, I don't know if you've seen the Netflix show, The Diplomat with Carrie Russell, but
No, not
it's
yet.
really a belly laugh. It is a wonderful show. But what's funny about it is she wants to divorce him. There's a reason she can't. but they have great sex. And I think part of that is because they are so honest with each other and they have this really incredible connection. The way he gets her breakfast, and so she just sits down, it doesn't have to fill her plate, and he's really paying attention to her and trying to be different, and it really fits. And I think the thrill is that being on the edge of divorce. I mean, I'm not saying that's something the audience should aspire to, but it's a fun show for that reason, to see their connection amongst disconnection. Yeah.
And the power of the obstacle.
Yes.
An obstacle makes you more attractive to me. The absence makes a heart go fonder.
I think it does. Yes, absolutely. Wow. Couples do not always have similar sex drives. Even for couples who started out with similar libidos, life changes can have an impact. What should these couples do when their libido is in different places, along with more communication?
Never say, I'm not in the mood, ever again. I know, that sounds like a really impossible ask, but of course I'll quickly contextualize it. I'm not going to cover this research in detail here because your guest, Emily Nagoski, does it beautifully in a previous episode of yours, so you can throw your audience to that. But what we're talking about is the difference between responsive desire and spontaneous desire. So when our libidos are different, one of us may have a lot of what's called spontaneous desire, which is it's really easy for me to get horny. It's really easy for me to feel, oh, Rhoda's looking good today. I just want to be with her and get naked and drive her wild. And when we're in a disconnect, almost always one of us is having quite a bit of that easy, spontaneous lust or libido or desire, and the other one's not. Tremendously important research on spontaneous versus responsive desire, especially in long-term love. So if I'm the partner that has a higher libido, which tends to be the case in my relationships until menopause, different show that one, let's do that one together. I would have a very high, easy, spontaneous arousal, and my partner, often it wouldn't be as high. Responsive desire is where people start to roll their eyes at experts like you and I when we say, as I said, never say you're not in the mood ever again, is a catchphrase I use to say, don't use being in the mood as your decision point for whether to engage in a sensual encounter. Now, that sensual encounter might be, let's have a shower together and soap each other's back, or let's just lay in bed nude and kind of stroke each other and kiss a little without necessarily an expectation of it moving to full intercourse or orgasm for one or both people. Instead of what we tend to do, which is if we're not in spontaneous, like we're not horny, we're not like, yeah, I want to make love or be sexual, we tend to say later, I don't know, not now. So it's a really, really painful topic. It tends to be the number one issue, bringing couples for help in the sexual arena, is one of us wants sex and one of us doesn't. So we're not going to fix it in 5 minutes, but I want to give people hope that you are normal. Like all of us in this field, my 3 favorite words to say to any couple is you are normal if you have sexual desire disconnect. But don't give up on gently, kindly, ideally with a touch of sweet humor, and the knowledge it's not always going to be easy or go well, to say our sexual life is important. I sometimes talk about sensual as sacred, this ephemeral. Often it can be even spiritual, emotional, physically great. You listed the incredible health and we didn't even get into all the mental health benefits of sexuality. And people neglect it at their peril if they're in a chosen monogamous relationship and you and I aren't attending to our sensual life and attending to our differences of desire and saying, how do we make this a priority? I say, make passion a priority. Then it does not fix itself and we end up more and more frustrated, more and more disconnected. We may be really strong on the other aspects of a relationship and have a very unsatisfying sexual life. So we can't give a quick fix. But again, first of all, acknowledge that it's normal to have different libidos. And it does not mean you hate sex necessarily. It does not mean you hate your partner. It does not mean your relationship is doomed. It means you have a pretty typical, I'd say at least up to half, probably more of longer term couples have a real sexual desire disconnect, even if they have a fairly serviceable, decent sexual life together. It is more like a difference in how much we like playing tennis or eating Thai food. Like, we're different here. How can we approach it with love instead of you're broken, I'm not mentality?
Oh, wow. That's really important. And I think about making pleasure and a priority. I addressed two women just yesterday about you're not having enjoyment and pleasure in your life. There's so much frantic energy when you're talking about what it is you're doing. And I'm suspecting you're not having a good sex life because that's part of pleasure. And they both said you're right. So, yeah, I think thinking about pleasure as a priority for yourself and then with your partner, that's such an important thing.
And I love that word. I'm glad you underlined and brought forward that word pleasure. Capital P, pleasure, whether it's melting a little bit of chocolate on your tongue and really mindfully, oh my goodness, that's delicious. Instead of that, eating all the Halloween candy in 10 minutes. I'm sure that I'm the only person that's ever done that.
Pleasure with your five senses, and that is about sensuality. So bringing us back to that sensuality piece, yeah. According to a 2017 study published in the Journal of Sex Research, stress can have a significant negative impact on sexual function and satisfaction, particularly for women. What can women do to reduce their stress and be more open, which were talking about, to the pleasure of sex?
What a segue, right? Unintentionally. You're bringing pleasure up in the previous few moments here. How does a woman experience pleasure? Well, that's as individual an answer as every set of gender-identified women ears listening right now. It might be through wearing softer fabrics, comfy clothes. It might be through movement. When's the last time we put on music when no one was around and moved and danced and enjoyed our body, whatever shape or size or wrinkled or cesarean scars it's got going on? Is it through making a exquisite cup of tea and that little sliver of high quality chocolate and mindfully consuming them? Is it through belly laughing and watching humor? Is it through cuddling your child or your grandchild? We so often forget that pleasure is also, as you've so beautifully pointed out, the five senses. Is it through listening to Vivaldi? Is it through scented, beautiful aromatherapy in your home? We tend to get so cognitively busy, driven. We're living in the future, whether it's 2 minutes from now when we've got to get to that hockey game, I'm Canadian, and pick up our child or whatever, that it's cliche for a reason, but do you stop and smell the roses? I challenged myself in grad school when I was under a lot of stress and pressure, as we are in that training program. Every time I walked by a swing set at a kid's playground, I would stop and have a swing, even for a moment or two, because you can't be grumpy and stressed when you're on a swing. So there's ways to have pleasure. We're not going to bust stress in adults in North America today, but things like reducing your time on social media or managing it, that you give yourself periods of time, making sure you move your body every day. A walk is excellent. It doesn't have to be more than that, depending on your lifestyle and abilities. Taking better care of your sleep, creating a beautiful bedroom is easier to sleep in, earplugs, dark, all these things. Move your body, eat reasonable food, and sleep well are the three biggest pillars for stress reduction. And then everything else we learn is on top of that. If your sleep, your movement, and your food are all buggered, you can do all the meditation and time with your friends and vacation you want, but you've also got to take care of the physical animal. And mentally, emotionally, I love to say this to women in particular, all men who it helps, please run with it. No is a complete sentence. Boundaries, saying no more than you say yes, saying yes to things you truly want to do, or they're something you don't necessarily want to do, but it's very important to you to do, to help your grandmother move. And say no to things, including desirable things, simply because too much of a good thing is still too much. So there's more of you for yourself to fill your feminine well, and then more of you for your family and partner and your health before you give it away to other things. So those are a few ideas. They may not be new to people, but I challenge each of us to do a quick mental checklist. Which of those am I actually taking as a study right now and spending time and energy on?
Yes, for sure. You say it is normal to have a sexless relationship. I believe it can be ordinary that so many give up on their sex life, but I doubt whether both partners have agreed to that because so many avoid the topic of sex, which we covered a little bit. Is there anything you want to add?
I think just to completely agree with what you just said, that in my career so far with private clients and with the people I've taught around the world and then thousands of people online now, I've only come across personally 2 couples in the last 23 years who were sexless in that they didn't have any sexual contact with each other. And absolutely both of them were completely reconciled with that. And that was the correct model for the 2 of them. I said, you don't need fixing. There's nothing to fix here. But hundreds and hundreds of couples who kind of present that way. We don't make love, we're kind of older, or it was just never, we didn't have a lot of passion, or we've got some childhood or spiritual or cultural things that just make it not our primary focus. Full respect. But upon deeper questioning, invariably, at least one of them was very unhappy about that and would prefer a richer sensual life with their beloved. And very interestingly, the second person who might be, no, it's just not for me, upon deeper examination, it was more of a, I don't think I'm capable of it, and it's too hard to try, and I'm afraid I'll fail, or I've never had an orgasm, and so it's just easier to not. So, to summarize, a lot of people are struggling really badly in the sexless relationship realm. It's higher than you think, but don't give up. It is not an easy journey. Well, refer to that couple I talked about off the top of the show here. 30-ish years sexless. They chose to take beautiful, loving steps toward creating an intimate and a sexual life again. Astounding. And I repeat that just because I wanted to give hope to everybody who thinks it's too late or they're too far gone. That couple in question, they're part of an ongoing monthly program some of the couples are in with my husband and I, and they issued a challenge to the rest of us. And they said, we've got a new thing we do in it, and we try to do this every day, which is to kiss in public for no reason. And they said, sometimes we get some really, cockeyed looks given that they're in their 70s, and they say, and we don't mind, we're just spreading the love. I mean, come on. So wherever you are, even if you aren't ready to be nude together or move to anything more specifically sexual, can you even hug in public for no reason? What can we do to make baby steps? Remember, we got to start where we are towards saying, this matters to us. It's a way to love and celebrate each other and being alive.
Absolutely. I loved reading in your material that 36% of newlyweds have to schedule sex. So many couples are surprised when I encourage them to schedule sex, as if somehow that is less fun. So tell us more about how scheduled sex can be mind-blowing.
Well, scheduling sex is, it's a thankless bit of advice to give, isn't it, Rhoda?
It really is.
Here's what I generally get this. Scheduling sex is not romantic. And then I reply, you know what's not romantic? Never having sex. And then I kind of win that round. But no, it's not romantic. We want that spontaneous desire. We want to both feel it. We want to, kiss goodnight and have our tongues touch and be set on fire, like I used to be in the first year with my sweetie 10 years ago. And just, have crazy sex just because we kissed goodnight and it was, I must devour you now. So scheduling sex doesn't sound fun. Get over it, because it's really, really important for your health and the cherishment of your sexuality to make time and to create time. If you rely on spontaneous desire, you're going to have very little sex, probably. Or you're going to have one person who's always badgering the other and feeling terrible about it, versus, hey, let's, Saturday at 3:00, baby, we've got some time. We find afternoons good for us now because of our morning and evening routines are kind of disruptive now. Let's do it. Now, what invariably happens, super normal, don't judge yourself, is at about 2:00 Saturday, you're thinking, oh gosh, we've got this 3:00 sensuality date. I don't feel like it. Of course you don't feel like it. You're doing your taxes or cooking fried eggs or walking the dog and picking up dog poop. You're not in a state of spontaneous desire. It'd be kind of crazy if you were. Maybe if you're an accountant doing taxes turns you on, but the rest of us, it does not. April 30th was tax time in Canada here, and we just passed it. So hence that reference. Okay. But at 3 o'clock, I may be like so not feeling turned on, but I love you. And I know our third side of our passion triangle, the sensuality side, is important, and I've given you my word. So maybe we simply start with, as I said, a shower or a bath together, or a hot tub if you have a hot tub. Or we say, look, we're going to go to bed naked and we're going to snuggle. And you can be honest, because if you're dialoguing about this somewhat effectively, it hopefully won't hurt your partner's feelings and they won't take it super personally. If you say, I'm worried about the taxes and I'm not feeling it all turned on. I don't know how the body's going to respond. And then I sometimes get just very explicit and I say, let's say partner A is feeling, I'm pretty horny, I'm pretty energetic. And partner B is like, I'm here because you matter to me. And I'm just, honestly, I'd rather have a nap. Partner A can say, well, look, you just lay there. Let me please you. Let me go down on you. Let me give you oral sex, or maybe get some lube or a vibe or a toy or a something, and see if, and you work on just relaxing your mind and attempting to be here now and focus on what's happening. It may or may not work. The taxes may win, but the body may also start to respond, and some responsive desire and physical arousal may occur. And then we may move on to lovemaking or a variation of lovemaking together. But what matters is you've honored the sensuality date. You haven't said, I'm too tired, let's reschedule. The only reschedules I quote unquote allow or recommend for my couples is if one of you becomes ill, you can ask for a reschedule. Honey, I've actually got literally quite a bad headache. Is it okay if we postpone until tomorrow? So there's respect to the commitment. So there's respect to the honoring of the importance of scheduling sex. Besides, let's state the blindingly obvious, we're all really super busy. And somehow we seem busier now that we've got all these convenient devices to make our lives easier, right? So if you don't schedule it, another way I put it is this, one of my favorite phrases, make your love life a hobby. And then I'm gonna put you on the spot, Rhoda. I'm gonna say, if you were to define the qualities of a hobby, what would you say? Like, what makes something a hobby?
Consistency. You look forward to it, and it's pleasurable. It's something you want to do.
You're a rock star. Those are all the perfect answers, and they're all true. So if you're a golfer or you love pottery or a cooking class, gardening, there you go. Horseback riding. We don't go, oh God, I've got to go gardening. I'm not in the mood. I mean, we might the odd time if it's like a thundering snowstorm, but generally exactly that. We create time for our hobby. We schedule it, because if we don't, who's got time for golf or gardening if we don't mindfully and deliberately schedule it? And so it's one of the things my couples love, and it becomes a bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing between them. Are we making our love life a hobby? Consistency, we look forward to it. We don't get paid for it, but we do it because we want to, and it's important. So that's kind of a nice concept, I think, kind of a gentle, less threatening concept to bring to scheduling sex is, can we schedule this as our hobby? Can it become one of our hobbies?
I love the reframe. That is so useful. No kidding. How can mindfulness lead to the sexual awakening many in my audience might need?
It is such a beautiful practice. I've got an extensive background in meditation and Buddhism. I do, 4-month silent meditation retreats. Most people aren't going to do that. So at the more secular level, the practice of mindfulness, as your audience is probably aware, is as simple and as difficult as being in the moment and focusing as much as we can our senses on what's actually happening right now. So I want everybody listening to do a little thought experiment right now. I'm going to get you to do it with me, Rhoda. If you're driving right now, you might have to do it later and you can just imagine it. But I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to take the fingers of your right hand and gently stroke and touch the top of your left hand. And just for a few seconds, we'll be quiet and focus on the sensations, both in the fingertips of the right hand that are touching the other hand or arm, whatever, and then on the receiving area, just for a second or two. What did you notice?
It's gentle, and it slowed me right down.
Right. And often people report, wow, it was pretty intense. Like just gently touching my hand, it felt quite intense and pleasurable and heightened. What was the special sauce? Did we do some super duper nuclear touch? No, the special sauce was we mindfully for a few seconds paid attention. Imagine that touch on your most erogenous zone. Imagine kissing with that type of focus, the way we did when we were teenagers. Oh my goodness, do you remember? It's been a few years for you and I, sister. I remember laying on my parents' red and black 1970s couch in our red and black 1970s rec room with my beloved first boyfriend and eventually became my first lover. We were together for 5 years, and we would kiss, and we weren't touching from collarbone down by mutual decision at that point. And we would kiss and neck. Why did we call it necking? I still don't know. I don't know why. They don't. It's a dumb. Hickeys. There you go. And the eroticism. I mean, being on the verge of orgasm through teeth, lips, and tongue, and focus. Were you thinking about your homework while you were kissing No, we were very, very mindful, naturally, without trying, super focused on this sensation. And it was highly pleasurable. There's that P word again, and highly erotic. So that's what mindfulness can do. And there's some great research. Dr. Lori Brotto and colleagues on mindfulness for women with sexuality issues, lack of desire, inability to orgasm, sexual pain after ovarian or uterine cancer surgery, showing the power of mindfulness. And I talk about this a bit in my book, and Lori's book is terrific. It's called Better Sex Through Mindfulness. Those would be two great resources, Buddha's Bedroom, my book, and her book, great companions for the power of mindfulness to help with your eroticism. I'm not going to say it's a quick fix like any training. If we've got 50 pounds to lose, we're not going to lose it because we understand how to eat right. But if we practice consistently over, months, we will lead to change. So very simply, as in our little experiment, I want everybody to do, touching your own hand with your eyes closed and focusing. It's like, wow, that feels really good. Kind of like when we necked with our adolescent partners.
Wow. Yeah, I like that a lot. I believe that anticipation is one important key to having better sex. Would you agree? And what are some specific ways my audience could improve their anticipation, which you've really been talking about? So you got anything else you want to add to that?
Couple of little tips. And what comes to mind with that word, remember the old Heinz ketchup commercial?
Oh, yes.
Anticipation. And it was this really slow pour of the thick ketchup, waiting, and your mouth is watering, whether you're a ketchup fan or not. Substitute chocolate or lemon or a glass of wine. Anticipation is a way to focus our mind on the good thing that is coming later. So very simple things like fantasize about your sweetheart while you're in the shower. Send them a love note, or better yet, a lust note. Just make sure their boss can't see it. Read erotica or watch something that turns you on, or even play with yourself, but don't finish. And think of your partner. Have a fantasy. Share a fantasy. Simply, instead of, oh yeah, Saturday at 3 we scheduled sex. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Could we anticipate and think and look forward to? And, really, lust notes and love notes is one thing I love to tell people to do. I say send lust notes, send love notes. Just as like, I'm thinking of you, baby. I can't wait to kiss you tonight. Or I so look forward to touching you tonight. And that can be way out of the comfort zone for a lot of couples listening. So they'd want to work toward that to make it more natural to remember we don't just relate through our parenting and our work and our running, what I call marriage incorporated or relationship incorporated, where we're doing a real good job of the company of us. The kids get to school on time. Everybody gets some sort of green vegetables every day. The dog gets to the vet to get their toenails done, and the mortgage is paid. Well done. But that's all chin up stuff, intellectual stuff, running the business of us stuff. What about the chin down, which is some of the richness of you and I? So essentially, anticipate and play. Be playful, learn to flirt again, the stuff we did when we were all subsumed with those OCD chemicals when we were falling in love. Can we recreate novelty? We can't, unless you have a brain injury, have novelty with someone we've slept next to for 27 years. But we can create novelty and fun. And remember, walk across a suspension bridge or whatever adventurous thing, or going on a trip to Paris or something that's new, is an external way to also bring some anticipation and interest back up.
Okay. How can my couples go about choosing to have gourmet sex?
Love the word choose, because we can also feel like we're broken, or we do what I call nipple, nipple, crotch, good night. We've got our routine, right? Always gets a belly laugh because we all relate to that phrase, right? And that's not bad. We eat regular food most of the time. Now and then a gourmet session, again, reminding people to start where they are. If you're currently not having intercourse or direct sexual contact, maybe your gourmet sensuality experience is to give each other a beautiful massage at this time. That's like a gourmet experience. For those of you who are being sexual, you might need a little help with a toy. I love board games. I love couples games. A couple of my favorites, you can just get them on Amazon or any good love shop. There's several truth or dare games for couples. One's a little card deck. One I think super cute is like a box of like pickup sticks, and you pull one out. One side's the truth, one side's the dare. So the dare might be, lay me down and lick me all over. The truth might be, what's one thing you've always wanted to do with me but have been too shy to tell me? It's so great, Rhoda. I give these away as prizes a lot to my couples and on my podcast and stuff, because there's such a simple way to get turned on and be a little more gourmet, a little more hot and heavy. And the beautiful thing about a game or a card deck or an exercise is I'm not responsible for what it said. So it kind of removes my embarrassment of sharing with you my own Cheryl secret desire. It's like, it's not my fault. The board game made me do it. So that can be a really fun way and an easy way and a playful way to bring some anticipation and sexiness and sort of outside of the box eroticism to a sensual encounter.
I believe another key component is developing your own sexual self-awareness, which you actually talked about in your triangle, knowing what works for you or is more satisfying, and then communicating that information to your partner. I think you really covered that.
Yeah, and so just to remind people that you may think you're sexually aware. You may think you like doggy style and you don't like really being on top, and your best orgasms are with oral sex. And that may still be completely accurate. But most of those ideas we discovered in our teens and 20s. And it's time to revisit them, even if you're still in your 20s and 30s, to say, are there things I'd like to try, or are there things I used to love that I'm not that keen on anymore? That's sexual self-awareness. The mental aspect. Am I a worrier? So many of us are, particularly in a mentally overstimulated age. Do I have awareness that when I'm worrying or thinking, or even thinking about what to make for supper tomorrow, it gets in the way of that mindful eroticism of even touching your own hand. If the instruction I gave wasn't think of something else and touch your own hand and see how it felt. So sexual self-awareness, clearly everybody listening right now is a little bit ahead of the game, because they listen to your podcast and maybe other good resources to learn. They're already aware enough to know that learning's important, that hearing new ideas or something framed in a slightly new way that lands is super important. Don't rest on your sexual laurels. Don't assume the sexual woman I was at 16 or 50 is the same sexual woman I am at 59, or maybe even the same sexual woman I was last Tuesday. Because maybe between last Tuesday and today, I saw something, read something, or thought of something that can give me a new awareness. Like, I never thought I wanted to do that, but it actually sounds like maybe an interesting thing to explore. So yeah, sexual self-awareness, keep learning and growing. Don't judge yourself harshly. You are not broken. We're all just bozos on this bus, as a friend of mine used to say, trying to get there the best way we can. And if we're not growing, we're dying. So be open, be curious, read, learn, listen to Rhoda, take courses, watch TV shows. I really enjoyed the Netflix TV show, How to Build a Sex Room. I got a real kick out of that.
I did not see that. I thought you were going to say the principles of pleasure, which I
No, I haven't had a chance to watch that one
enjoyed
yet.
that. And I learned some things. And I've been talking to people. I started out doing incest when nobody talked about it back in 1980. So I've been talking about sex with people a really long time, and I learned stuff from that program.
Yeah, so that's sexual self-awareness. You and I still learn.
Yeah.
Thank goodness, by the way,
Yes.
or we'd be kind of arrogant idiots if we didn't think we could, let's be honest. But watch shows like that and learn and go, really? People want to do that? They want to build a sex room and do that? That's not my jam. But in another episode, there's someone who just wants like a romance boudoir. And you go, oh, that appeals to me. And just be open, be curious.
On television, sex just flows so beautifully once they begin. In real life, there may be awkwardness after a dry spell or in a new beginning with someone. What can you tell us about the reality of awkwardness that would help make it okay in our heads?
Okay.
TV does kind of tick me off.
Okay. I'm going to tell you the one that ticks me off the most. And that was the original Sex in the City, which I enjoyed very much. But oh my goodness, the sexual misinformation. And here's a story that anyone who remembers the original Sex in the City, it's okay if you don't. There's a character of the four women in New York in their sexual awakenings. I think they're in their 30s in the original one, called Samantha. Samantha was a sexual dynamo. She would bang anything that walked, loved her sexuality, so sexually empowered, have sex with all sorts of different people, have screaming orgasms each and every time. Here's the key point. You may not even know this. A lot of people don't know this. The actress who played Samantha, Kim Cattrall, weirdly, she actually grew up an hour from where I am on Vancouver Island, and we had the same acting teacher. We never met. She, in her early 40s, released a book with her then husband called The Art of the Female Satisfaction, The Art of the Female Orgasm. Now, it's not the greatest sex therapy book. There's some inaccuracies, but the story behind it is unbelievably powerful. The actress whose entire career was playing the most sexually liberated, dynamic, orgasmic woman on the planet in popular culture never had an orgasm until she was 42 years old. Can you imagine the inner turmoil for her as a woman? Everybody going, oh, Samantha, and she's thinking, I can't do any of that with my own body. So she wrote this book. She was in a marriage for a time that was healthy for her. He was a tender, dedicated lover, and he gradually helped her find her sensuality and her orgasm. So the story is more important than the book, because you want the best example of your very beautiful point of sex on TV or movies or romance novels and sex in real life. There are farts. There are wet spots. You got to go get a damp face cloth to mop yourselves up. There's body failures. There's menstrual blood, or it's life, everybody. It's messy, just like every aspect of life. And so when we can bring some grace and some humor, and frankly, some pragmatics, like having a damp washcloth next to the bed, to just say, this is the body part, big deal. Let's focus on pleasure. Let's focus on emotional connection, and let's laugh when it goes awkward, weird, or difficult. That's very hard to do. I don't want to make light of how fragile we are as sexual beings and how these things can really lead to unwarranted but deeply felt embarrassment or a sense of awkwardness. But it's more, if we're going to be literally and figuratively and emotionally naked together, let's be emotionally and literally and physically naked together. And that's going to be real. And it's beautiful. TV, sex, romance. And I also like to point out, as most of us kind of know, maybe it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek comment, who writes romance movies? Usually 40-year-old virgins who live with their cat in an apartment and are writing their hope and dream. Just saying. And this beautiful dialogue that they're too afraid to actually ever try out with a human in real life.
Any final words you'd like to share with my audience?
Oh my goodness, yes. Great sexuality is all in our head. Ultimately, it's not in the penis or the clitoris or the candles or the sheets or how many toys or which lube you have. Those things can all be helpful supports, but it is the mind of a lover. It's the interest in choosing to schedule our sensuality, to be open to try to understand, as you said, sexual self-awareness, to talk, to grow, to experiment, to figure out through experimentation what we don't want to try again, and to have that sense of humor and that curiosity, and to always remember, where do we start, Rhoda? We have to start where we are. Wherever we are is exactly the right place to then learn and grow and start, exploring the next phase of what I hope is a lifelong, ever-changing, dynamic aspect of our humanity and being in a couple.
Dr. Fraser, where can my audience find out more about you?
The best and easiest place is just my website, which is my name, drcherylfraser.com. And I encourage people who are interested in what they're hearing, if you go to my website, you can take what I call the passion quiz. It takes under 10 minutes, and it gives you where you are on those 3 keys to passion. Where are you strong in intimacy, thrill, and sensuality, and where are you weak? And you get a couple videos explaining that. And it's kind of a fun way to do that yourself, get your sweetheart to do it. And then it can be a jump start to a conversation. And then they can learn about other ways to either work with me in the ongoing program I teach once a year, or just enjoy, as they do with your wonderful work, the podcast. Visit my podcast, Sex, Love, and Elephants, which I would love to have you be a guest on, by the way, Rhoda, and continue our
I would really like you
together.
to come back and talk about menopause sex. I think that is a really great topic. You mentioned it, and I thought, oh, she's right. Thanks for tuning into this episode. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us create better content and reach more listeners.
Thank you for listening to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't. If you have enjoyed the show, please leave a rating and review on iTunes and help get the word out. To learn more or connect with Rhoda, visit therapyideas.net.